usually if you're at that high elevation, you probably want to see them a little bit later, like August. When I go huckleberry picking down in Skamania County, usually it's around the second week of August or so, and I always see a lot of Mariposa Coppers flying around. It's one of the only butterflies left out there at that point. And I think I forgot to mention, this is a female. So the females don't really have that reflective coloring, and they have a brighter orange patch on the forewing with these brown spots, and then this really squiggly orange line here. Look almost identical to purplish copper females, but the ventral side is completely different. They have all these markings here, whereas the purplish copper is more the plain background. And next we've got Juniper Hairstreak. So this guy, this female actually, right here, I collected on the Sinlahican, and at the time, in 2008, we thought this was a new county record. I've been helping Jonathan Pelham, a curator of the Burke Museum. He curates the Lepidoptera there. We've been trying to acquire all of the butterfly records for the entire state for all of history and get them all into a database that's searchable and can be used for research and everything. And in doing so, we discovered that somebody that we know, buried in his old slides and records and stuff, he has actually seen or collected this butterfly once in Okanogan County. So he has the official county record. This would be called the second county record, but they're out there. But they're a hard butterfly to find because the caterpillars feed on juniper in our area. On the west side of the Cascades, they're usually on cedar. And the adults rarely stray far from their trees, from their host plant, and they're often higher up in the trees, so you don't notice them. Plus, they're a tiny little brown butterfly. They will come down to nectar, but they're rarely in very abundant numbers, so you might be distracted by all the blues and coppers and things like that are on the flowers, and there might be one Juniper Hairstreak out there. So you really got to keep a sharp eye out. They're a very pretty butterfly. They have all these rich colors here, and if you zoom in to that part of the wing, you would see that there's blue and purple and brown and red. All the scales are just very finely colored, really, really pretty. And Arctic blue. So there's a lot of common species of blues in the area. This guy, it's not rare, but you have to get at high elevations to find him, except at the Sinlahican. We actually have a record low elevation for this butterfly at the Sinlahican. These can be found quite low, higher up in the Arctic, because they're found all the way across Canada, Alaska, Russia. They're all the way around the northern rim of the globe. But they dip down into Washington along the Cascades and a few other spots in the lower 48. But they've never, in the lower 48 states of the U.S., they've never been recorded below 5,000 feet elevation, except at the Sinlahican, we found them at 2,400 feet. Big surprise. And we're still trying to figure out what in the world they're eating out there. Usually they feed on saxifrage, which I think is on the Sinlahican, but we just haven't found a good patch of it in a spot that we can access. These guys, I think they're pretty much up on the cliff. But they drop down by the road, and we're seeing puddling in moist areas along the road and nectaring on flowers, and that's how we discovered that they're there. They only fly for a couple weeks, so they can be hard to catch just right. You got to get out at the right time of year and the right weather to find them. The males are this very icy blue compared to the other blue species that are more of a lavender blue or just kind of a solid, rich colored blue. The females are kind of this gray color, gray-brown with a little bit of blue scales here. And then the ventral is really striking because they have a lot of white on a brown background, and most of the other blues are a little bit more of an even-toned gray with black and white patches. But the white on the other butterflies, the other blues, never gets this extensive. These just have a ton of white. So if you think of ice, it's an Arctic blue. It's ice blue and a lot of white on it. And a good place to see these in Okanogan County would be at Slate Peak or Harps Pass. That area get really high elevation. If you're backpacking out there, keep an eye out. In a little bit when I talk about collecting records and how to give those to the record keepers, we are looking for people who are backpacking because there is a lack of butterfly records in hard to reach places because not a lot of people are documenting that. A lot of people just drive along the roads and write down what they're seeing. Metal marks. This is primarily a tropical group of butterflies. There's only one species that occurs here, and it's in the Okanogan. Okanogan. I keep getting we're still trying to find it at the Okanogan. We're determined that it's got to be there. But again, they only have about a 2-week flight period, and they're one of the last butterflies to fly in the summer. So it can be hard to get. A lot of people that are out catching butterflies are trying to go in July when most species are out. And by the time it's the end of summer and they know they might only get 1 or 2 species, they just don't really care anymore. So these guys, their larvae feed on Eriogonum, and they love to nectar, the adults love to nectar on rabbit brush. So a good time of year to see these is right around Labor Day weekend. So if you're out camping, you're along the river, or out somewhere where there's a lot of rabbit brush, watch out on that rabbit brush. You will get a lot of insects, not just butterflies, but a lot of insects coming into that because it's often one of the only plants left blooming at that time of year. You'll get a lot of migrant butterflies coming through. Monarchs use it a lot, painted ladies, red admirals, and these guys. Okay, last we have the biggest group of butterflies, the Nymphalidae. These are medium-sized to large butterflies, usually darker shades, browns, oranges, reds. Got Milber's tortoiseshell that feeds on nettle. Morning cloaks are on willow. Lorcan's admirals are on willow and alder. Melita crescents are on just about any kind of thistle, not just the natives, but the non-natives as well. Most of these overwinter as adults, and quite a few overwinter as larvae too, actually. So oftentimes these will be some of the first butterflies you see in the spring because they've overwintered as adults. They can pop out on the first sunny day. They don't have to wait to finish maturing in their chrysalis and then emerge. Morning cloaks here, these are pretty much my favorite butterfly. They just have this brilliant burgundy color on them and these bright blue, kind of purplish blue spots and a bright yellow wing border. They are hiding under tree bark, in rock piles. They might be in your wood pile. They'll hide in a lot of places. Sometimes people will see these coming into their garage in the fall and think, oh, how did a butterfly get in here? They shoo it out. Well, it was trying to find a place to hibernate, because it wants something that's not going to get super, super cold, but they need to be cold enough to stay in that hibernation state. Dale found one of the morning cloak under some bark there, I think under a fire scar or something you flipped over.
Piece of wood.
Yeah, flipped it over and it looked dead. It was just kind of sitting there. Well, it's because it was in that hibernative state, it wasn't going to be using any of its energy or anything. Yeah, some butterflies actually can be frozen and then come back. Caterpillars, actually, a lot of caterpillars that overwinter in the Arctic, they have a sort of an antifreeze in their blood, like woolly bear caterpillars. Those can be frozen, and in the high Arctic, the caterpillars will actually go through several years before they turn into a moth. And the caterpillars just get frozen solid. People have experimented and frozen them in ice cubes and then thawed them out the next summer, and they come out and start eating and they're just fine. Okay, so Viceroy, I wanted to point this out. This is kind of exciting. I want you all to keep a sharp eye out for this guy because it has not been seen in Okanogan County since the 60s, but Dale is almost positive he saw one in 2017. I'm pretty sure he did, but we don't have a photo. We don't have any official confirmation. They were really common along the Columbia River and kind of Okanogan River too, I think. And through like the 1916, that era, there was a well-known butterfly guy, a lepidopterist, that lived in Brewster, and he's documented these were very abundant in the area in the early 20th century. But with the dams flooding the habitat, because these guys feed on coyote willow or sandbar willow, which grows right along the shoreline. That's their favorite host plant, favorite larval food. So that gets flooded out, and you have a lot of an increase in the orchards, so a lot more pesticides, things like that. So they think it's a combination of a lot of different factors that cause these guys to eventually die out. But Dale was kayaking on the Okanogan River, somewhere between Tonasket and Riverside, and when they were hauling out, he thinks he saw one of these on the willows on the shoreline. They are about half the size of a monarch. So if you see something that looks like a monarch, but it just looks unusually small, probably is this. And a good way to tell them apart is this black band here that runs perpendicular to the wing veins. Monarchs don't have that. Monarchs only have black wing veins along their wing here. They do not have any other black markings that crisscross the wings. So that's what you want to watch for. And also, these are part of the Nymphalidae family, or subfamily. So they're the same genus as Orquin's admirals, and they fly similar. They kind of have this very straight-winged flight where they do this flap, flap, glide, flap, flap, glide, and they'll just soar really straight for a little while and just flap every once in a while. And these guys are known to do the same thing. Very distinctive flight pattern. So those are some of the things you want to watch for. So it is very possible that these guys have been in Okanogan County all this time, but just in these remote, hard-to-reach places, you know, on private property where people didn't know what they were. They just may not have voiced them. And I think this is the last one. We've got Freija Astarte fritillaries. These are very high elevation jewels. They're fun to see, but they can be hard to get to. Freija fritillary, a really good place to see it is at Long Swamp. But you got to get there fairly early. It'll still be flying when there's snow on the ground sometimes. Usually they'll fly in June. And Astarte fritillaries, these guys only fly in even-numbered years because they have a 2-year life cycle. And these, a really good place to find them is at Slate Peak, up in the Talus Slopes.